Hello and welcome to this new video where I'm going to give you your feedback on the Week 9 chapter discussion, which was about the American economy in the early 19th century. The first question was, how did the market revolution transform the American economy? By the market revolution, we mean those changes where increasingly production was for sale on the market rather than just local production. Well, we can think of it as a virtuous circle where a greater demand for manufactured goods meant money could be invested in infrastructure, in the manufacturing and in the transportation of goods, making it easier and cheaper to get those goods on the market, making them more attractive for people to buy, etc., etc. So the whole economy is developing on this basis. Some features of this revolution were improved transportation, such as the building of roads, canals, famously the Erie Canal, which linked the Midwest to New York, making it easier for goods from the Midwest to get to the East Coast, and incidentally turning New York into the main port of the East Coast as opposed to Boston or Philadelphia. And later on, the railroads come along as a new technology. We see urbanization, which we'll look at in question 2. We see the rise of the factory system, where individual manufacture by artisans in workshops is replaced by mass manufacture in factories by unskilled workers working in the same place producing the same good. The second question was, how did the growth of towns and cities affect American life? Well, some of the features of this are obviously larger population centers emerge. There are more cities and larger cities than there had been previously. We see poor areas such as the 5 Points in New York, areas of overcrowding, poor sanitation, pollution, etc. The 5 Points was notorious for having a reputation for violence and lawlessness. We see a mixing of different ethnic groups. I think one person mentioned the movie The Gangs of New York, which is set in 5 Points, and which one of the major themes of that is the so-called native, not Native Americans in the modern day sense, but native-born Anglo-Saxon Protestants' resentment against other incomers, notably the Irish and the African Americans. We also see these towns becoming larger, and there's a spread of the areas of urbanization and development of separate areas for the richer and the poorer population, and some early forms of public transportation allowing what today we would call commuters to come in from the wealthier areas to work in the cities. We don't yet see the modern divide between city and suburbs or modern day mass transit, but we're seeing the origins of that kind of divide between the city and the suburbs in the cities of the 19th century. The third question was, how did slaves show resilience and resistance in the South? Well, I'll start with resistance first. There were a few armed uprisings, most notably Nat Turner's in 1831, but armed uprisings were fairly rare in the United States. More common were low-level acts of resistance. Escape, which sometimes was temporary, sometimes people escaped just for a few days just to get away from plantation life, or more permanent escape. This was easiest from the border states rather than from the Deep South. Slowing down production, for example, by going slow, pretending to be sick, damaging tools so that plowing or seeding could not take place. And then we see resilience in the form of a kind of an African-American culture developing among the slave population, notably religion. Christianity had been urged on the slaves by the whites as a way of pacifying them, of bringing them into European culture, and also teaching them to know their place. Bibles were cut and pasted in order to pick out the passages which urged slaves to obey their masters. But the slaves took to religion, took to Christianity, and gave it their own spin, emphasizing the elements such as Moses' flight with the Israelites out of Egypt, which stressed hope for the slaves, hope of deliverance, as Moses had delivered the children of Israel.